Every single person with CFS experiences this. Every time you have a symptom and then your mind starts trying to figure out, oh, do I have this? Could I have this? That's the magnifying glass effect at work. Hey guys, how's it going? Miguel here with CFS Recovery. Today I want to talk about the magnifying glass effect. Now, I've touched on this analogy in a lot of other videos. If you watched my breakdown of the science behind my recovery up here, one of the first videos I ever made on this channel, you would be familiar with this concept, as well as on some of the Q&A calls, I talk about this a lot, also in the previous videos. But the magnifying glass effect is essentially what happens when your brain is on high alert mode and it perceives every stressor as 10 times worse than it actually is, and actually takes things that aren't stressful and turns it into something that's stressful. Now, here's why it's important to understand this. Let me take you back a little bit. When I was really sick, everything was stressful, right? The smallest things that I could tolerate before now were very hard to tolerate. Some things that were normally not stressful were now very stressful. Some things that didn't, bother me, now they really bothered me, and I just didn't realize what was going on. I also felt like I was hypersensitive. I would watch movies and I would cry. This is one time, I'm not afraid to admit this, I'm not shy to admit this, but I was watching Moana. This is when I was bedridden and really bad. Couldn't really function. When I tried to watch a movie here and there, I'd be looking like on the side of the TV, not directly at it, but I watched Moana and I was in damn near tears. Now, I wasn't near tears, I was in tears by the end of the movie. And that's a kid's cartoon, like a Disney kid's cartoon. And here I am, like 22 years old, bawling my eyes out from Moana. Now, I didn't realize what was going on. I didn't understand why I was so hypersensitive to things, but it really came down to my brain really putting a magnifying glass on the different stresses in my life or the different stimuluses in my life. Everything was amplified, whether it was emotional or mental or physical. My nervous system would perceive it way more intensely than it actually was. So going back to the analogy, I want you to think about it like this. So if there was a spider, on this table to my side over here, or just think of your dining table. If there was a tiny little baby spider, it seems kind of harmless, right? Even me, I'm not the biggest fan of spiders. I'm pretty sure I'm like arachnophobic. Just crawling around, it's harmless, right? Not scary at all. But if you take a big magnifying glass and put it over that spider, that same spider is gonna appear 10 times bigger. And nothing happened to the spider, but what did change was the lens that we're looking at it through. So it's the same spider, same table, we have the same eyes, but what we're looking at it through is a magnifying glass, and that's gonna make it appear 10 times bigger. It's gonna magnify it. And so that's exactly how our brain works when it's in a high stress mode. It will amplify almost everything. That's why seemingly simple tasks are a lot harder to do. Small stressors seem very big now. Things that we used to tolerate, now we can't tolerate them anymore, whether it's bright lights or it's loud sounds. Normally that wouldn't bother us as much, but now it's like it is being amplified. Our perception of things is being amplified, and that's because our brain has been under so much stress, whether it's mental or emotional or physical. Usually it's mental and emotional that causes us to end up like this. But when our body reaches our stress threshold, now we're in high alert. The brain starts to go into survival mode and it thinks there's danger everywhere because it's so used to responding to stress, it forgets how to turn that stress mode off. So it gets stuck there. So now everything we look at is a trigger. Everything we look at seems a lot more stressful than it really is. And so for you watching this right now, unless you've done some really deep exercises of awareness and trying to catch yourself thinking negative thoughts, it's hard to become aware of this because these things are running on autopilot. You probably don't even know a lot of the thoughts that are going on, which is one of the first exercises we do in Recovery Jumpstart is we get everything on a sheet of paper or in a document so that way we can become aware of these things that are going on in our mind, all the extra noise. The biggest area I see this in for people with CFS, and including myself, is every single symptom I used to have, it would seem like the end of the world. If I have a weird pain in my chest, instantly, I look at that as having a heart attack. If my legs are sore from walking around, I'm like, am I having a blood clot? I'm getting kind of shortness of breath. I'm like, are my lungs failing? Are they giving out? If my heart rate is high, right, am I also having a heart attack? So all these different symptoms, my mind would instantly jump to these different triggers, and I could not stop thinking about those. I could not stop thinking about, oh, what could this be? Could this potentially be an undiscovered virus that there's no cure for, and now I just had to suffer for the rest of my life? And it would be kind of like a downward spiral that I talk about in a lot of my other videos, but one thing would lead to another. So there's this one time when I was in the hospital, I was working with my doctor. I had just met him, and we started improving my mindset and everything and doing a lot of brain retraining. So I was able to move around a lot more, and he taught me this exact analogy and this concept of the magnifying glass. And even though I knew it, I was essentially moving from being bedridden to a wheelchair to a walker. When I was transitioning from a walker to trying to walk around on my own, my legs were sore like I had never felt before. And this is coming from someone who was an athlete growing up. You know, I played multiple sports, so I know what it's like to squat like 300 pounds or bench press 185 pounds and go for sprints and run for miles every day. I know what kind of soreness that brings, but this was a whole nother level because I hadn't used my legs in about 6 months, really. No, more like 8 months. I was not walking. My legs had shrunk to about half the size that they were before. I ended up bedridden for 6 months. And so my hip flexors were sore, my tendons were sore, everything just hurt so bad in my legs because they were not used to this amount of activity. And worst of all, I think my calves were one of the worst. And I literally thought I had a blood clot because they were so sore, they were throbbing because I hadn't worked those muscles in such a long time. I literally thought I was having a blood clot and I couldn't get my mind off it. And I knew this idea of the magnifying glass, but still, even knowing it, I had to constantly remind myself, like, look, your mind is jumping to conclusions. You really believe that this is a blood clot, but you kind of knew you were going to be sore going into this. Your doctor even told you. And a few days later, it went away, but it's funny because I shared that story with my doctor and he was like, it's a good thing you recognize that. That's the biggest thing. Even though, yes, you were panicking a little bit, you knew at the end of the day that your mind was playing tricks on you and it was coming up with problems that actually didn't exist. It was trying to find answers to your symptoms when really the symptoms are warning signs for your body to slow down, or they're actual just soreness in your legs. And that's more of like a drastic story because most people are not bedridden for 6 to 8 months completely. And most people are not doing any activity for that long. For me, I literally was not doing activity for that long. And then I started walking around again. And you know, my legs really felt it. It felt like I went for a 20-kilometer run. That's how much my legs hurt. So it was really interesting. But that magnifying glass effect, every single person with CFS experiences this. Every time you have a symptom and then your mind starts trying to figure out, oh, do I have this? Could I have this? That's the magnifying glass effect and work. Every time you have a weird shoulder pain or a chest pain and you think you're having a heart attack, that can be the magnifying glass at work. Now, I want to have a disclaimer here. If you do have sharp pains in your chest, that does not mean you're probably not having a heart attack. But the chances of you actually having a heart attack are pretty low because chances are if you're watching this content right now, if you're on this channel, then you've had multiple blood tests, scans, x-rays, MRIs, maybe you even had a Holter monitor, you've seen a cardiologist, neurologist, endocrinologist, you've seen all these people and they can't find anything. And so for people watching this content, this explains why you're feeling all the things you're feeling. It's the nervous system gone wild, but in addition to that, every time you feel a symptom, you spiral in your mind mentally and you start to have panic and fear, and that's what leads to more symptoms. So you get stuck in this downward spiral, but it all comes down to that magnifying glass effect. That's why things seem so irrationally scary, where if you're on the outside looking in, people actually think you're crazy. People thought I was crazy, and looking back now, if I was looking at myself, I would think I'm crazy because I was checking my heart rate, I was checking my blood pressure all the time. I was thinking I had early onset of Parkinson's one day. The next month, I thought I had adrenal failure. The next month, I thought I had fibromyalgia. Next month, I thought I had multiple sclerosis. So I was really trying to dig for an answer for this because the doctors weren't giving me an answer. So that's another tricky thing about this. And it's not all your fault, right? Your brain is doing what it's designed to do to protect you. But it gets tricky and we run into a problem when we get stuck in that state. So we need to get out of that state and just recognize that there is the magnifying glass effect going on right now. And it's gonna be ongoing. You need to retrain your brain to take that magnifying glass off and look at things from, a more logical and realistic perspective rather than looking at it from an anxious, fear, survival point of view. So that's all I wanted to share today. If you enjoy this type of content, if this made sense to you, make sure to hit that like button, make sure to subscribe, drop a comment down below, and just remember, you are just one mind shift away from living a life with thriving health. I'll see you in the next video.